got us thinking, I guess we can make music with anything.
Well, I guess you can. Well, yeah,
Hello.
Good morning, Jimmy.
Hey, good morning.
How you doing? I hate when that happens.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Yeah, we're all set here.
Okay.
Yeah, so Ben, just start the clock, and then we're good to go.
Shh. Let's go.
All right, welcome aboard, everyone. It is after further review here on a Monday morning after Week 15. The Browns are 6-9 after losing to the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday, 31-15. I'm Dave DeNatale. Happy to have everybody with us, and as we do on After Further Review, we launch it with the voice of the Browns, Jim Donovan. Jimmy, happy holidays, my friend. Good morning.
Good morning, Dino. Happy holidays to you.
Yeah, not a happy holiday for those who went to First Energy Stadium yesterday, and boy, I thought you put it real, appropriately after the game on Jimmy's take. For all of us who had so many thoughts about what the Browns-Ravens game could have meant and what we thought it was going to mean, just the sight of the empty seats and the exodus out of the stadium at the end, just very disheartening.
Yeah, I think it was a very sad day. I really do. I think it was a sad day even driving down there yesterday because of what you just said, that when you looked at the schedule and you saw the Ravens late December, just before Christmas, you said to yourself, and I think we all kind of thought the same thing, that with the way the Browns were being projected to be on the field, we'll be playing for a division title or at least a playoff game. And, of course, that really wasn't in the offing. The division title was gone, and the playoffs were going into the game yesterday were like 0.8%. So that made it kind of sad. And then as you watched it play out, it really struck me that you took a look and you had two teams that were going in very, very different directions. The Ravens are playoff ready. I mean, they really are. In every aspect of the game, they are ready to be the top seed in the AFC, and they're going to be a handful for somebody to have to beat going into M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore. And then the other thing is, you take a look at the Browns and where they are right now and where they're going, and they're stumbling to the finish line. You have to question kind of the intentions of some of the players out of the field, whether or not they even really want to be there right now. And that's kind of sad. So you have two teams that are going in very different directions. And to further that point, I think you have two quarterbacks who are going in very different directions right now. Lamar Jackson's having a historic MVP season. He is opening the door for other quarterbacks who play that style of play that he plays at. Although I don't know if anybody can play at that level, but still, I think teams should be more open-minded. If you have a quarterback coming out of a spread offense in college football, and you're probably more open-minded to see that it might work in the NFL because of what he's done so far in 2 years. And you have our guy who, at this time last year, I think the arrow was pointing higher for him than it was for Lamar Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
And, that's not happening at all. He's really having a tough season, a bad season. And so you have two teams going in different directions, and I think you have two quarterbacks going in different directions.
On that thought, real quick, do you expect that Greg Roman will be a head coach somewhere in the NFL starting in 2020?
Well, that's normally the way. If you're the hot coordinator, and he definitely is the hot coordinator, but he has he's so to speak in NFL terms, he is coaching a child prodigy right now because he is so young, Lamar Jackson, in his career. I think that just the way of the NFL, Dino, I would have to say that he's going to get a lot of interest now. He has a definite style, whether it was with Colin Kaepernick or now with Lamar Jackson and even some of the other spots that he's been in. He has a certain, style of play that he's very, very good at coordinating and teaching, and it has exploded with this.
But when there's a long line of picky eaters
it would have to be a particular team that would be looking to do that kind of play, I would have to think. I don't know if he could go and just handle a team. I mean, he probably can, but I don't know if he can just come in and preach to a standard NFL offense with a drop-back quarterback, a pocket passer, and things like that. I mean, he is really an expert at the running game, and now at the running game involving his quarterback. But, history would tell you that he'll get a lot of interest in the NFL once it becomes open to everybody to start looking for their new head coach.
Learn how the
in most of
Foundation
these
One
losses
test can
this
help
year
your
for the
doctor
Browns,
connect you
there's
with
been a common
personalized treatment
denominator
options.
that you
For the
can
intended
point
use
to a
and safety
specific
information, visit
time of the game
startwithstep1.com.
when you say, here it comes. It might be getting away from us. And certainly it was the end of the second quarter, I thought, yesterday. And the fact that the Ravens scored 14 points with 0 timeouts, just kind of the way that whole, starting from the Browns trying to, on a 3rd and 1, to do a gadget with Kareem Hunt from their own 28 with an option pass, to allowing Baltimore to run down the field on them 2 separate times. Just kind of a microcosm of the season almost.
How to make a delicious bowl
It
of
really
oatmeal.
is. Freddie has
Start
definitely
with whole
gone
grain
into the
Quaker
bag of
oats.
tricks, and the bag
Then
of tricks
add a
has
spoonful
had
of
mouse
bold.
traps inside of them, and they're snapping on them right now because none of those plays, the play
Maybe
yesterday
a pinch
and
of
some of the other
sweet
plays that
nostalgia.
happened, the 4th down play,
Definitely
in
a cup
Denver,
of you
you
deserve
know, all of
this.
these different plays,
The
the
perfect
shovel
bowl
pass
is yours
in
to
New
create.
England. I mean,
Or
the
not.
fact that we can
We're
tick
not
them
in
off
charge
our, off the top of our head tells you that
Our
there are
oats,
way too
your
many of them,
creation.
but none of them have been
Quaker
successful. Whereas last year, even almost a year to the day, basically, I think it might have been a year to the day coming up today anyway, the last home game of the season for the Browns last year, they had all kinds of trick plays that they used, and they all worked. I think Landry threw a pass in the game, and they had all kinds of fun stuff going, but they were a different football team, and they were also in a different frame of mind, and at least on that day, they were playing a much different opponent in the Bengals than the Baltimore Ravens, who came into the game yesterday 12-2. But I think there's been this kind of streamline of, hey, listen, we're going to outthink everybody. We're going to be pretty clever here, and it's come back and it's really bitten them every time that they've tried to do it. And yesterday was the standard example of having that happen. That was the most obvious example of just get to the halftime, at the very least, be ahead 6-0, and it was all right there for them to do that. I mean, on a 3rd and 1 play, to go to that kind of play was just bizarre, especially where they did it on the field and against that defense. And, but if they had just gotten the first down, I mean, Baltimore had no timeouts, so you were at least going to get to the locker room. They had 6-0, even if you played it conservatively and you didn't go down the field to try and get a field goal out of that to try and add 3 more points to the 6-0 lead. And then the other thing you had to factor, too, is Baltimore was going to get the ball at the start of the second half, too. So, it was just really very, very poor clock management, very poor sideline decisions. But it's not unique to yesterday. It's happened too many times this year.
Did you have a problem with them going for 2 early when they were, at one point when they were, I think it was 24-15, and the idea is to get it under that 8-point threshold with 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. For me, I always like to keep it a 1-possession game. I've listened to the arguments. I mean, really, it doesn't matter. The Browns lost, but I'm just curious as to what you were thinking when they were doing that.
I really, the basic thing, the real frustration is Seibert missing the extra point.
Correct.
You really, that has now happened. I think he's missed 4 in the regular season now, and typically it's always the first one. I mean, it was the first one against Tennessee. There was another one early in the game, I think, against Seattle, and he's. You can go through the storm of a young kicker, and that will be interesting to see what they do there because, I mean, if you take a look at him, he hasn't made a pressure kick yet.
Right.
Because they really haven't been in a situation where they have, game on the line, he needs to make a kick and get them the win. I mean, he hasn't been put in that situation, and that's not his fault. I mean, that's the situations in games that they've put themselves into. But he's missing too many extra points, and really, it always seems to be the first one that he kicks in a game. And then you're chasing that point for the rest of the day. And, of course, we talk about this through the season when this has happened to him. So it didn't really hit me. I knew that at some point they had to do it. They had to go for 2. I thought that they felt that, I didn't have a big argument against it. I just... I was kind of ambivalent to it. I knew at some point they were going to have to do it.
Okay. Yeah, that ended up being a big argument on social media. And, looking back on it, I'm like, okay, it was just silly because the Browns lost and it didn't matter. But I was curious to get your mindset on it. So the Browns have one more of these to go. They'll be in Cincinnati this Sunday. And, here's the thing. It's another division game, and the Bengals pretty much have locked in the first pick in the draft. But they're going to want to go out and beat the Browns and make the misery go another week for them. And, the Browns have done well against Cincinnati over the last couple of years. But, Jimmy, I think this one, Cincinnati's going to be the much more motivated team than I think the Browns are in this game.
Well, yeah, and obviously yesterday they were very motivated because they were way behind in that game against Miami, and they came all the way back in a very short amount of time that was left in regulation time, and they tied that game, and then only to lose it in overtime. And I thought they played very hard here a couple of weeks ago, too. I really thought that if you looked at the stat sheet and really the quality of play, they were probably the better team in Cleveland that day. It's just, some things happened, and the Browns ended up kind of running the football, and Chubb hit a couple of big plays, and the next thing you know, Cincinnati kind of wilts because they're just not built right now to be a really good football team that can bounce back once they, fall behind in a game. But I really thought effort-wise they were the better football team against the Browns a couple of weeks ago, and they were a fighting team yesterday because of the way they played. So I really go back to the time when the Browns were going on the winless season, and we went over to Pittsburgh, and the Browns played very, very hard that day. And Corey Coleman dropped that fourth down pass late in the game on a drive that probably, it would have. If they had been able to get it in, they would have won the football game, and they were devastated after the game because of the whole moniker of them having a winless season and everything that represented. But the fact was that they laid it all out on the line that day over at Heinz Field, even though it was against the second and third strings of the Steelers. So I really think in this kind of a situation, and with a first-year head coach to it, like Zach Taylor is, I think a lot of guys are playing to be invited back to the team next year. So I would expect, I don't think you're going to have a lot of people at the game, but I would expect the team will play pretty hard. And the fact of the matter is they're not punished at all by winning the game. They've got the number one pick, so they have that wrapped up. And I just think that you want to go out on a winning note no matter who you are. Now, on the other side, it will be very interesting to see the level of effort that we get from our guys and who plays, as a matter of fact, going into that game with nothing left to be won or, for that matter, lost. It'll be interesting to see who plays and who doesn't play, even before they go out onto the field.
Well, and it's interesting. All this happened like yesterday. Before the Browns even took the field, we started hearing on CBS about the Urban Meyer rumors, and I don't put a lot of stock into it right now because Urban is a whole nother. You have a lot of layers of whether or not he'd want to even come to the NFL, much less come to Cleveland. But now it's going to start, and the rumors are going to start this week, and what the Browns are going to do in the future. There's going to be, in a season of noise, the decibels are going to go up here big time this week between now and Sunday.
Yeah, no doubt about it, and I think everything's on the table. Let's be honest.
How to make a delicious bowl of oatmeal.
This has been a huge disappointment.
Start
I don't
with
think
whole
that,
grain Quaker
anybody
Then
inside
add
the
a
Browns
spoonful of
organization
bulk.
felt that they would be sitting at 6 wins and 9 losses going into the last game of the season. Now, if you flip that around and they were 9 and 6 going into the last game of the season, I think that
Definitely
they
a
would say,
cup of
yep, that's
deeply
just about
served.
where we should be. And
Your
if we
perfect bowl
can win
is yours
10,
to
we
create.
should make it into the playoffs. I really think
we're not in
even
charge here.
through all the hoopla inside the
Our
building,
oats, your creation.
separated from all the
Quaker Oats.
noise, the preseason noise that was
When a
around them,
nasty
I
cold won't let
definitely
you
think
sleep,
that they
try
felt
NyQuil
this
Severe
is
with
where
Vicks
we will
VapoCool
be. We're going to be
and
going down to
vaporize.
Cincinnati with a chance to go 10 and 6 and probably play in the
NyQuil
playoffs
Severe
and
with
maybe
Vicks
even
VapoCool,
host
the
a playoff
vaporizing
game.
nighttime
But
coughing,
we're
aching
far
stuff
away
you
from
had
that
best sleep
right
with a
now,
cold
and it's
medicine.
not even
Honey,
good to
hint,
the eye to watch
Burlington,
them play, especially the last 2 weeks
Whoa.
against
Think of all the
Arizona
money I'll
and
save.
against
Mom,
Baltimore. And when
look,
that
honey,
happens,
you paying
and
attention?
you have even what happened earlier in
I
the
love the
season,
gifts. I love
and
the
all of the
savings.
other
I
stuff
love
thrown
this.
into the stew, you have a situation where you are a part of all of these rumors now of coaches being on the hot seat. I think this hot seat, this coaching seat here is broiling right now. I really do. And the other thing, Dino, is I think everybody is probably, whether it's Urban Meyer or Lincoln Riley or some of these other coaches. I think everybody has their eyes right now on Dallas and what happens there, because that's the Cadillac job because of the money, the facilities, the aura of coaching.
Well, maybe
the
not,
Dallas
but do call
Cowboys,
somebody.
even working for Jerry Jones probably has some attraction to it. So I think everybody probably has their eyes on that, and then the Browns will be with all of the other teams that probably, fall in line after that if indeed the Browns make a coaching change.
Well, and there's something that I think we talked about last week on Donovan and Dino. The level of attraction of the Browns job isn't necessarily going to be in early 2020, let's say, than it was in early 2019 when they hired Freddie Kitchens, because people have seen from the outside, what am I going to get myself into if I go to Cleveland?
Well, yeah, and the other thing, if they did make a coaching change, it would be another one and done. And as much as they can tell you inside the interview, if you're sitting in there and you have the right to ask them questions and you say, hey, listen, how stable am I going to be? And if they say, don't worry about it, that's when I would start worrying about it at that point, because the position and the amount of change and the short turns of these coaches. Not just the one and dones like Rob Jasinski and Freddie ended up in that class too, but a lot of guys 2 years and done.
Right.
Coit's advanced cleaning methods refresh and restore your hardwood floors, tile, and grout to look like new.
I really do
Call
believe that, you walk
Coit
into
or
the
go to
situation
Coit.com today and get
you have to take a look at
35%
it.
off.
The history of the amount of change.
the monster. I was
The team has
hit,
come
I was
back in
screamed at.
1999.
Changed you forever?
You would have to
They
have a
took my
heart-to-heart
freedom.
with
They
your
couldn't
wife
take
and
who I
family
was.
if you're the head
Next,
coaching
Dr.
candidate
Phil.
of the Cleveland Browns.
Today at
and you
4
go in
on
there
3.
because it is a very unstable job. And I know they want it to be stable, but something happens and it isn't stable. And it really rocks this team. But, the other thing that you have the right to go in and ask if you're sitting in there is, when am I going to get Myles Garrett back on my football team? Because that has been a huge problem for the Browns since he hit Mason Rudolph with that helmet in that Thursday night game. That destroyed the remainder of the season. That took away one whole aspect of their attack, and that was defense. Their defense became non-defense at that point for the remainder of the season. But if you're a coaching candidate, you have to wonder, okay, when do I get him back? Am I going to have him back for the off season? Is he going to get still suspended into next season? Is it going to be 4 games? Is it going to be 8 games? What is it going to be? And, that's going to be an important part of the equation. So you may have the quarterback, and you definitely have a running back. And who knows what's going to happen with the wide receivers, how they're going to shake out. But the best player defensively, arguably maybe the best player on the team, at least when you take the job officially, you don't have him on the team at that point.
Right. And everybody was asking this morning what happened to the defense. Well, no Myles Garrett, and everything kind of changed on the defense in this season. Jimmy, as always, we appreciate it. Have a great holiday. We'll see you later tonight on What Matters Most at 6 in the front row at 7.
All right, Dino, thanks.
All right, thank you. That is the voice of the Cleveland Browns, Jim Donovan, joining us on After Further Review. And, it's funny to hear him say that. You talk about a vote of confidence that, an owner or a general manager gives to a coach. I mean, you need the vote of confidence before you even get hired. That's about how bad things have gone. And, whoever comes, and there are only 32 of these jobs in the NFL. There are only 32 head coaching jobs. It's going to be in demand. And as Jimmy said, you've got a quarterback, you've got a running back, you've got tradition, you've got talent. You also have a lot of question marks, and it's one of the reasons why, as I said, again, the job this year might not be as attractive as it was last year. Just something for us to think about. Ben Axelrod will join us in a couple of minutes. We'll talk with him more about that. We put on Twitter for you a question following yesterday's loss. Who is most to blame for the Browns' 6-9 record going into this next to last week of the season? Now the final week of the season, really starting now. Gave you 4 options, as always, on Twitter. John Dorsey, the Haslams, Freddie Kitchens, or the players. 71% of you say Freddie Kitchens. 13% the players, 9% the owners, and 7% the general manager. So that's interesting to me. I'm not surprised it's Freddie getting the most votes, but surprised that the GM is getting less of those votes than everybody else here, as we bring in Mr. Axelrod, who just has put a story now at WKYC.com about the third down pass attempt that was such a critical juncture, as I mentioned it with Jimmy in the game yesterday. The Browns leading 6-0. They've got a 3rd and 1 at their own 28-yard line. The Ravens have no timeouts left in the first half. So if you get to the 2-minute warning and you get under the 2-minute warning, you can run out the clock and you're going into halftime with the lead. And that's not what happened.
No, it's not. And the explanation was almost worse than the execution. And the execution was obviously they run a failed halfback pass attempt to Kareem Hunt. We wouldn't have even known it was a halfback pass if we didn't see him pump fake it.
Right.
In kind of a last-ditch effort before he got tackled for an 8-yard loss. And the Browns wind up having to punt and giving Baltimore enough time to score not once but twice,
right.
Because of their play calling on the ensuing possession. But Freddie Kitchens' explanation was pretty baffling. He said that they were going for a trick play on 3rd and short, and if they didn't execute it, that they were going to come back and go for it on 4th and 1 from their own 28-yard line, which gives Lamar Jackson and that Ravens offense the ball back
on a very short field.
On a very short field with essentially 2 minutes left in the game. And obviously it wound up working out as poorly as it could have without that even happening.
Right.
But the fact that was the logic behind it, and that was the plan that they had it not, or had they gotten the pass off and it fallen incomplete, or had it been anything but an 8-yard loss, is pretty mind-blowing.
It's just, to me, it was every game. It's like if you look at all the 9 losses this year for the Browns, there's that sequence in almost every game where you sit there and you go, okay, what were they thinking? Whether it's the 1st and goal with the Rams and not giving it to Nick Chubb at all, or what we saw yesterday, and
the Seattle game. The Seattle game sticks out as probably the most. Before yesterday, the most egregious example. And it's just there's a track record in all of these games where there's a sequence or a play or some scenario that just, it doesn't add up in terms of winning an NFL game. And the margin for error in this league is so small. And you even look yesterday,
a lot of
like
folks
you said,
ask me why their dishwasher doesn't get everything
take that 6-point lead into halftime.
I tell them
the other side of it, and I know you and Jimmy mentioned
that's
this,
why more dishwasher brands recommend Cascade Platinum.
After the half,
it's specially designed with the soaking, scrubbing, and rinsing built right in. Cascade Platinum's unique action packs dissolve quickly to remove stuck-on food for sparkling clean
Baltimore
dishes
not having any
the
timeouts.
first time.
Baltimore
choose the
did
detergent
everything
that lets your
to put itself in a hole in that first half.
Cascade Platinum, the #1 recommended brand in North America.
I know you wrote about this after the game.
How to make a delicious bowl of
Beckham
oatmeal.
and
Start
Freddie
with
Kitchens
whole grain Quaker
basically,
oats. Then add a
Beckham doing
spoonful
what
of
Jarvis
pulse.
Landry did last week.
Definitely a cup of you
basically
deserve.
yelling at the coach.
Your perfect bowl is yours to create. Our oats,
and I've
your
heard
creation.
ex-players
Quaker
talking
oats.
about this, and I talked to one last night, in Eric Allen, the former Eagles defensive back, about this. You see, players will sometimes maybe, have a shouting match with their position coach.
Right.
Maybe a coordinator, but you hardly ever see that with your head coach.
You don't, and that's, I think what happened yesterday with Odell was ultimately different from what happened with Jarvis. I think Jarvis was yelling at Freddie, hey, get me the ball, I want the ball. Odell, I think it was frustration with the officials, frustration with the Ravens players. I don't think he was going off on Freddie about the play calling or the failed two-point conversion. I mean, that happened right after he caught a 3-yard touchdown. And so it sounded like he had been warned, and I'm not sure if he was warned by Freddie or warned by an official that, hey, your next personal foul, your next unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, you're getting ejected because you had the taunting penalty in the first quarter. So Odell, I think, was upset about that and it was more venting, it seemed like. But you're right, the optics of it, and a lot of times in this league, the optics are everything.
Right. When
you couple that with the exchange that Jarvis and Freddie had a week ago, you just don't see it. Even if it was a venting scenario, which giving everybody the benefit of the doubt, it seems like it was, you don't see that with Bill Belichick. You don't see that with Mike Tomlin. You don't see it with John Harbaugh. And so just from an optics standpoint, it really kind of calls into question how much respect there is for that head coach and Freddie Kitchens in that Browns locker room.
I said this to Jimmy. If we are in a coaching change mode here with this football team, and we'll find out soon enough in the next 8 days or so probably. I don't know. I mean, the Browns are still an attractive job, because of the talent that John Dorsey has assembled. But Jimmy's point, I think, is right. If you're somebody whether you're a guy like McCarthy or Rivera who's been a head coach before, or if you're unproven coordinator guy looking for your first head coaching job, in the back of your mind, you got to sit there and say, do I want to put myself through this kind of dysfunction when I've seen what it's done to either one and dones like Kitchens may be and Rob Chudzinski was, or guys that were only here for two plus years, like Hugh Jackson, Mike Pettin, etc.
Yeah, I think one, and I know you and Jimmy made this point too, the Dallas job is the key to all this, because if Dallas becomes open, I think that automatically becomes the most attractive job just in terms of a legacy. And I mean, the Browns have a talented roster. I think the Cowboys roster is just as talented, if not more talented, and more proven players on that roster as well. But if that job's not open up, it looks like this might be a year where Carolina's already open, Washington's already open. I think Carolina's probably on par with the Browns in terms of its attractiveness.
Yeah, I would say.
Although they have questions at the quarterback position as well. But, I think, I look at Urban Meyer because Urban Meyer was the guy who was mentioned yesterday in the reports that came out about Urban Meyer. And I covered Ohio State for...
You wrote a book about, you wrote a book about the
guy. I know a thing or two about Urban Meyer, and knowing what he values, I just can't imagine him taking the Browns job.
Said the same thing last night when I was asked about it. I don't see it.
I don't see it. This is a guy who cares deeply about his legacy and how he'll be perceived. And anybody who's taking this Browns job, just historically, the odds are stacked against you. The odds say you're not only are you going to fail, you're probably going to be out of there in less than 3 seasons. So, look, I think Urban Meyer could make it in the NFL. I think Urban Meyer thinks he could make it in the NFL, but just knowing what he values in terms of organizational and all of that continuity, he's going to look at this Browns job, and he's just as aware of what's going on with this franchise as anybody else.
When we look at John Dorsey, this time a year ago, like we were grading him. I mean, we'd give the guy an A+.
Right. 6 months ago.
Even 6 months ago, he gets an A+. His job performance now, because, rightly or wrongly, he was the one who hired Freddie Kitchens. The Beckham trade, the Zeitler for Vernon trade, the way some of the 2018 draft class, Austin Corbett's gone, Avery's gone, Callaway's gone. I feel like we have to, I'm not calling for the guy's job. I mean, I think he's done a good job, but I think we have to view him maybe from a different lens now than we did a year ago.
Oh, no, there's no question about it. And the Kitchens hire that's at the top of that list. And, something I'd be interested in learning and asking about and seeing is how involved is John Dorsey in the decision to have David Njoku inactive? How involved is he in Rashard Higgins' lack of playing time this season, which has just been totally baffling as far as what the Browns are throwing out there on the field. From a personnel standpoint, this roster has holes, and maybe bigger holes than any of us anticipated. But every roster in the NFL in a salary cap sport, I think, is going to have some holes. The thing is, this Browns, it has more talent than the 6 wins they currently have.
Right.
It is a more talented roster than a 6-9 roster. We just talked about those sequences, the Seahawks sequence, the sequence yesterday. Now, I don't think they probably win yesterday's game, but the Rams game was a winnable game. The Seahawks game was a winnable game. The Broncos game was a winnable game. The Pittsburgh game, the second one, that was a winnable game. I thought something that really put everything in perspective was, aside from winning their own game, which losing that game yesterday eliminated the Browns from postseason contention, all 3 of the results they needed to happen elsewhere happened, which puts into perspective how crushing that loss to the Cardinals was, how crushing that loss to the Broncos was, how crushing that second Pittsburgh loss to Duck Hodges and the Steelers was. With a different head coach, do they win some of those games? Probably. And that puts you in the playoffs. And that goes on Freddie Kitchens, but it also goes on John Dorsey, who decided to hand the keys to a playoff caliber roster over to a first-year head coach who, to this point, looks unqualified for the job.
Would you expect, if we do have another coaching search here with the Browns, the Haslams to have more say and maybe Dorsey to have less say? And I wonder even if they might go back to the old way that Jimmy and Dee do things where the head coach reports directly to them and not the general manager. I don't know. I just wonder if because of the way this worked out, if they may want to wrest more control over the process.
I think it's certainly in play. I think it's they hire ahead. They fire Freddie Kitchens, let's say. John Dorsey now is next man up. He's the next guy up in terms of responsibility, and they trusted John Dorsey from all accounts that they handled this process like a normal.
You want a fresh-smelling home, but some air fresheners use heavy, overwhelming scents. Try Febreze One, a range of innovative air fresheners with no heavy perfumes that you can feel good about using in your home to deliver a light, natural-smelling freshness. Febreze One neutralizes stale, stuffy odors and releases a subtle hint of fragrance, like bamboo or lavender and eucalyptus, to eliminate odors with no heavy perfumes. Try Febreze One. Brand power helping you buy better.
I think that's kind of the natural pecking order of things. And I think it's, you can just kind of follow the NFL and follow how these things usually shake out. The reason why I tend to think Freddie Kitchens won't be back next year is because if you bring him back, he's already on the hot seat.
Right.
And that's another potential wasted year with everything I just mentioned. And that's just a bad scenario to be in.
Yeah, because then if you bring him back and you get off to a slow start and you make a change after 4 weeks, then you have to have do what you did last year.
It's another wasted
have an
season.
interim coach, and it's a wasted season.
Yep.
So it's unfortunately it's like the Fisher cut bait. I mean, I just think at that point, the Browns are where they are, and it didn't work. It's not. Hey, it's not all Freddie's fault.
No.
Didn't work.
Still looking for a dry skin
solution?
solution?
And that's,
Try
yesterday
Eucerin
they clinched
Advanced
having a
Repair
worse
Lotion.
record than
It
they
helps
had a
stop
season
dryness
ago
from
at
recurring by
7-8-1.
going beyond ceramides
And
with
that's,
natural
I think
moisturizing
if they
factors
fire
found
Freddie
in
Kitchens,
skin.
I think that's gonna
Eucerin
be really
Advanced
telling
Repair
because
Lotion for
the
healthier
Haslams
looking
are
skin.
very sensitive to this idea of their organization.
Only
that after the
Tylenol
Rodgers
rapid
and
release
firing,
gels have laser drilled holes.
they're so quick
They
to cut
release
bait
medicine
and that they
fast
are
for
an unstable
fast pain
franchise,
relief.
even though the results speak for themselves.
Tylenol.
They don't want to do this. They want to keep ahead. That's why Hugh Jackson, after 1-31, got a third year, because they were very sensitive to the idea that this is a franchise that fires and hires people on a yearly basis. But the results at this point speak for themselves as far as Freddie Kitchens' first year.
So,
somebody asked
you want
me
to get creative with your oatmeal.
What is,
First, you
is there
need
anything
whole
you
grain
can
Quaker oats.
take away from this
Then
from
add
this
some
year? It's,
solid choice.
other than Nick Chubb, I really couldn't
Perhaps
come up
dash
with a
of
lot.
fruit
Yeah,
dairy.
And I understand where this franchise has been. Like you said, 1-31, when
And
there
maybe
was
a bit of tried and
nothing
true.
to feel great about.
When it comes to
But
creating your perfect bowl, anything can be an ingredient.
what we thought the
Okay,
roster
almost
was, and
anything.
given what
Our
they
oats,
brought in,
your
you sit there
creation,
and you go,
Quaker Oats.
What
This is
was
fun,
what was
isn't
good about this year? It's very difficult.
Yeah, I posed that question on Twitter. I think actually after
What's
the Cardinals
new?
game
Just
last week,
tap
and,
the app.
What's
the most
happening?
and I said the
Just
exact same
tap
thing.
the app.
Aside from Nick
What's
Chubb,
the
what are the
weather?
positives
Just
of this
tap
season?
the app.
The most common
The
responses I got
WKYC
were
News app is
Jarvis Landry
updated
having a
and
Pro Bowl
better than
year,
ever.
Mac
Now
Wilson
loaded with all sorts of new
developing into
features,
some sort of
including
NFL
dark
player.
mode, improved alerts, and forecast
They were
tools
saying the
that'll
kicking
make
and
you a
punting
weather
situation.
pro.
I'd limit that
Make
to
your
just
screen
punting
smart.
situation.
Our best news, your
and that
favorite
you beat
device.
all three
It's
division
3
rivals.
news, wherever,
To me, those
whenever.
are
Download it from the App Store
they're
today.
nice things. They're positives if you want to look at them that way. But big picture-wise,
KNR has helped
they don't really
thousands of
mean a
injury
whole lot. I
victims
mean,
get the
the
money
fact
they
that you
deserve.
hadn't beaten all
Because
three
at
division
KNR, we
rivals
don't claim
in
to
the
be
past
trial
couple years
lawyers.
in a
We
single
are
season
trial
says more
lawyers. Don't
about
be a
where
victim
this franchise
twice.
has
Call
been when you play all
1-800-HURT
three
now and
teams
get the
6
settlement
times a
you
season
deserve.
than it does about what the 2019 Browns
It's the
have
Holiday Trade
accomplished.
Exchange at Helene Kia.
Yeah, I mean, Jarvis
And any
Landry
trade
has
goes.
had a nice season, but we've seen,
ATVs, boats,
Josh
jet
Gordon
skis.
has
If it's got
had
an engine,
a
Helene
Pro
Kia
Bowl
wants
season
your
here.
trade. And we'll give you up to 10 grand off any new Kia in
much
stock.
in terms of what
Yes,
the team's
up to
record was.
10 grand off.
You know, you have enough draft picks, you're going to hit on some, you're going to miss on some. I just think big picture-wise, it's, Baker Mayfield has taken a step back, a massive step back as far as his development. The Odell Beckham experiment has gone about as poorly as it could have. You lose Myles Garrett for half the season.
After the accident,
Like you
we'll
mentioned,
pay your
the
bills.
holes in this roster,
KNR fights
just
for
kind
every
of
penny you deserve.
spotlight being put
We don't claim to
on
be
some of
trial
John
lawyers.
Dorsey's
We
draft
are
misses,
trial
everything
lawyers.
that's gone on with
Don't be a
David
victim
Njoku
twice.
and
Call
Rashard Higgins.
1-800-HURT now and get the
There's a lot
settlement you
more
deserve.
same old Browns to this roster and to this season than I could have expected entering the 2019 campaign.
All right. My friend, as always, I appreciate it. Big day today. You and Matt Florjancic will have plenty of coverage at WKYC.com. Is there a chalk talk this week?
I will get back to you on that.
Okay.
We're working out some scheduling.
Yes, yeah. I mean, that's what people want to know. Is there a chalk talk?
We'll have picks. I don't know if we'll have a show, but we'll have picks.
All right, my friend. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Ben Axelrod joining us, and we thank you for joining us as well. Again, more coverage of the Browns and Ravens and where this team goes next at WKYC.com. Jim Donovan will be in tonight at 6 for What Matters Most and at 7 with the Front Row. All right, for Ben Axelrod and for Jim Donovan, I'm Dave DeNatale. Thanks for watching After Further Review right here on 3 News, Facebook Live, and YouTube.